We're up to mitzvah 91. This is a mitzvah aseh number 37. This mitzvah is found, it's a performative mitzvah number 37. This is found in Parshas Mishpatim. It's a mitzvah on males in the Beis Hamikdash, in Eretz Yisrael, found in Shemais, Perach of Gimel Pasuk Yates, Shemais 23, verse 19. Reishis bikurei ad moscha tavi beis Hashem lekecha. The first fruits, the bikurim, the first of your first. Ad moscha, the fruits of your land. Tavi, you should bring beis Hashem lekecha, bring it to the house of Hashem. So you bring it to the Beis Hamikdash. So we are commanded to bring the first fruit that ripens on the tree of that season, bring it to the Beis Hamikdash, give it to a kohen. This is the mitzvah of bikurim. Now, this doesn't apply to like eggplants, okay? This applies to the Shivas Haminim, the famous 7 species which Eretz Yisrael was famous for. What were they? Wheat, barley, grapes, figs, pomegranates, olives, dates, and Jaffa oranges. No, not Jaffa oranges. Okay? Not Jaffa oranges. Dates. Now, what's the point of dates, by the way? It doesn't say dates in the Torah. It says chela. It says, what's this?
Shachianu.
Shachianu? No. It says dvash. Dvash timorim. Doesn't say what it is. Timorim are dates. But it's the honey of when it says honey, it's a land that's flowing milk and honey. The honey is not honey for bees. It's honey from dates. I have date honey at home.
Is it good? Good?
Yeah, I use it all the time. You guys don't even realize when I put it into recipes and it tastes like sweet. It's from date honey.
What stuff?
What stuff? Different things. Maybe one time you'll taste something and go, this is sweet. What is this from? And I go, you know. All right. Now, wine and olive oil were also brought as bikurim. So, grapes includes wine, and olives includes olive oil. So every year when a Jew would notice some of the Shivas Haminim, the 7 species, begin to ripen, he would tie a string, or some kind of a thing around them, that he'd recognize them. When they ripen completely, he'd bring them to the Beis Hamikdash, and he'd give them to the Kahanim who were on duty from that week as the Mishmar, the members of the watch of that week. The farmer would take at least 1/60th of his first fruits and place them into a very fancy basket to be brought to the Beis Hamikdash. When the farmer reached the outskirts of Yerushalayim, the whole Yerushalayim would come out and would be singing and dancing.
For every single farmer?
They would come, by the way, the Mishnah discusses how they would meet. People, pretty much the season started happening at a certain time. You know what I mean? There was like, when you see ripening, it would ripen really across Eretz Yisrael. It wasn't like one guy it ripened for, another guy not. I mean, it did happen. But, so then everyone would start meeting in a certain place. Discusses the cities that they would meet in. And they would have these wagons, and they would all gather, and they would come together. It would be an incredible thing. They came with torches. It was just like, and by the way, the wagons that were brought, they didn't schlep the wagons, so they had all these animals, and they had the animals also covered, decorated. It sounded beautiful. Now, and the Levium would sing special songs in honor of this, so they would have like a whole concert.
For each.
Then he would come to the kohen holding the basket on his shoulder. He'd say these certain psukim from Parshas Devarim, which we'll see later on. It's mitzvah 606. By the way, it's called Arami Oived Avi. And there's a whole parsha that you say. It's a whole, couple psukim. Which, by the way, those psukim, just going to throw this in, those psukim that we say by bikurim, when you bring bikurim, you're not going to believe, we still say those psukim now. We say those psukim today.
In Korbanos?
No, not in Korbanos. We have a whole special group And everyone's sitting there around the table wearing their finest.
Smears?
We put out delicious looking things like a matzah and maror. That's right. That is the Haggadah.
Oh.
The bulk of the Haggadah is a explanation of the psukim that we say when you bring Bikurim. And it's an interesting thing. The father of the Seder sits there wearing like a whole kittel. And he's supposed to look a little bit like a Kohen. White kittel. The Kohanim wore white in the Beis Mikdash. He sits there like a Kohen. And what is he sitting around with? The Bikurim. His firstborns. That's what the family's kind of represented. And what does he say? Well, really, it's his Bikurim, and he's bringing it. He's supposed to be a little bit like the Kohen. And he's supposed to recognize that he was lucky. It's all very interesting things to think about. And I want you to think about this a little bit. What is this representation? And he's supposed to look back and say how lucky we are and how difficult it was. And again, how lucky we still are now. And that's what, and you're supposed to feel so good that you say, Hashem, thank you for everything. Just like a person would feel when they bring the Bikurim. It's an interesting thing. So we still do this. Without realizing it, most people don't realize we live this every year by the Pesach Seder. And not necessarily with fruits. Now, as soon as the Bikurim fruits were brought into Yerushalayim, they become forbidden to a non-Kohen as Truma, because it belongs to the Kohen, and the Kohens get the Truma, so it's like a little bit like Truma. When we would bring the Bikurim, we also we bring Karbanos along with it. Now, every year, you have to understand, the Bikurim were accepted by the Kehanim between Shavuos and Chanukah. The psukim that were said, like we just talked about, this whole parsha, those psukim that were mentioned, were only said, you used to say it when you brought it in front of the Mizbeach, right, like I said before, were only said between Shavuos and Sukkos. Between Sukkos and Chanukah, when it was still brought, but it was not recited. Now, why would that be? You have to think a little bit about this. When a person would go back after Sukkot, what do you think the weather conditions were like? It was cold. You haven't yet been in Israel for the winter. You will be there for the winter, and you will feel it is cold, it is rainy. It doesn't rain a whole year except for after Sukkot. So it's raining. Think about this. You're schlepping all the stuff on wagons. It's cold, it's rainy. Everyone else probably brought it already between Shavuos and Sukkot. You've got Tammuz, Av, Elul, and half of Tishrei, 3.5 months. So they've already brought theirs. You are still the same schlepper whose stuff didn't ripen until now when it's cold and uncomfortable. Everyone already had that thing with the singing and you're now kind of just bringing it. So how do you think when you get there and you're going to say those psukim, you're going to say, thank you Hashem, Arabi, Hashem, with all the things that happened to me and I'm so happy, I'm excited? Probably not.
No.
So therefore it says you have to do it with simcha. If you don't do it with simcha, don't say it. So it's like a guy davens. If you're going to daven, say it with kavana, with some feeling. If you're not going to say it with feeling, you know what it's like? It's like sending somebody a letter or a note or a card with absolutely no meaning. It's a message to learn.
Well, you know, I send a thank you card, like a card to someone, like that's maybe by that.